I've owned the 4th series Apple Watch for a long time now, and overall, I like it. It's fast, it's got a lot of great features, it integrates well with other Apple products, and it's a handy thing to have on my wrist. But it's not for everyone. When I did my last long-term review of an iPhone, there were a few complaints that I didn't go, deep enough into detail with my experience about it, so I'm gonna try and inject a lot more of that into this review to give you guys a better idea of whether or not you should buy one. All right, so let's break this down into the 4 categories I think are the most important: design and comfort, performance and battery life, apps and features, and price and competition. I think once we get into those 4 into detail, you'll have a much better idea of whether or not you want to own an Apple Watch. Make sure you stick it out to the end though, because even though I say a lot of great things about this watch and I like it a lot, that doesn't necessarily mean that I recommend you go out and buy one. The design in terms of how it looks is definitely a personal preference. The Apple Watch to me has always had this sort of odd look, or it looks a little out of place. No one thinks that an Apple Watch looks like a traditional watch, and knowing Apple, that's what they were going for. It stands out. Personally, I would have preferred a more traditional shape, like the look of Samsung's Galaxy Watch, for example. It's a bit more classy and less in your face. That said, the squareness does have some advantages. It gives you a bit more screen real estate than, say, a Circle would, and it functions a bit more like the screen of your smartphone, so in that respect, it's fine. Speaking of the display, it's increased in size over the previous 3rd gen Apple Watch, and the bezels have shrunk. I have the largest 44mm version, and you can definitely see the difference of the screen-to-body ratio between the 44mm Series 4 and the 42mm Series 3. Does the 0.13-inch display size increase really matter in daily use though? Absolutely not. That should not be a deciding factor for you if you're between the Series 3 and the Series 4. Apple's sapphire crystal glass protecting the OLED display is still holding up very well though. I don't have any scratches on it, and I've pretty much put this thing through the ringer. I've smashed it off so many things during the time that I've had it. I've also never had a problem with brightness. The Series 4 can actually get up to a whopping 1000 nits of brightness, so everything on the watch is readable even in broad daylight. The auto brightness seems to work really well too. I never find myself needing to turn up or turn down the brightness manually because the display is either too dim or too bright. Comfort is generally quite good. The nylon band that comes with the Apple Watch is pretty comfortable overall in just about any scenario, and is ideal for working out and being worn in environments where the watch is going to get wet. Which is a good thing because the Apple Watch is waterproof and people are bound to take it swimming or in the shower or whatever else. That said, the way the watch is put on is a bit annoying and takes some getting used to. It's similar to a belt, but pushing the end of the watch strap through the retainer loop can be very uncomfortable or even borderline painful because it pulls on my manly arm hairs. The watch straps are also extremely expensive to buy from Apple if you want a different color. Luckily, Amazon has some cheap alternatives if you want to go that route, and I'll leave some links down in the description down below if you want to check some out for yourself. Now for the performance. As expected, the S4 chip inside the Apple Watch is holding up quite well. It's only a dual-core CPU, but given that it's a simple OS with a small display, it does just fine. I've experienced almost no slowdowns in regular everyday use, with the exception of Siri for some really weird reason. Every now and again, when I ask Siri to do something simple, like, set an alarm or a timer, she tells me that I have to wait a few seconds. It's a little annoying, especially since the main point of having a smartwatch is the convenience of saving you time from pulling out your phone and doing the same things. Other than that though, performance has been just peachy. The 16 gigabytes of storage is plenty for just about everything you'd ever need in a smartwatch, including the thousands of songs that you can store inside the music app. Nothing to really complain about here. Call quality is also great since the microphone and speaker on the Series 4 have been upgraded. Voices come through loud and clear on the speaker, and the microphone picks up your voice clearly and without introducing too much echo. If I'm alone in my house, I usually prefer using the Apple Watch to make calls or answer calls, as it frees up my hands to continue doing whatever I was doing before the call came in. The other thing that an Apple Watch does incredibly well from a performance standpoint is the haptic feedback and vibrations that this thing makes. If you miss an Apple Watch notification, it's because you either sat on your arm for an hour and it went numb, or you have some congenital defect in which you're completely immune to feeling in your appendages. The vibration motors are just so good at actually vibrating your arm without making much noise. Battery life is something that every smartwatch struggles with, and the Apple Watch is no exception, unfortunately. I charge my watch up every single morning. I don't have to, as I find I can use about 50 to 60% battery in a full day, so I could easily get a day and a half if I wanted to. But I usually like to keep the watch between 40 and 80% to keep the battery happy over a long period of time. Your mileage is going to vary with this though. I take full advantage of the OLED display and use a watch face with a lot of black in it so those pixels are off at all times to conserve battery. But if you choose the new Vapor or infographic circle watch faces, you might find that they will eat your battery up a little bit quicker. Either way, the included charging interface thingy charges the Apple Watch really quickly. I leave the watch on the charger for about, half an hour to 45 minutes every morning, and that's usually enough to refuel the watch for another day. So we know that the watch is snappy, it's fairly comfortable, and it can last your full day, but what the heck do you use it for other than telling time? Well, there's actually quite a bit. Of course, it can do the standard smartwatch stuff, like notifying you when a text message comes in and allowing you to respond. It takes incoming calls, or you can make outgoing calls with it. It'll mirror push notifications from your phone. You can control the music on your phone, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But then there's things that are a little more unique and either only found on a handful of smartwatches or are completely specific to the Apple Watch. For example, the Series 4 has an electrocardiogram or EKG system built straight into the watch that can give you EKG readouts by holding your finger up to the crown and using the EKG app. Unfortunately for me, Apple actually disabled this in good old Canada, so it's not even a feature I can test or take advantage of. In any case, the Apple Watch can do lots of stuff, but there are a lot of apps and features that go unused, and quite frankly, they're gimmicky, like the walkie-talkie feature that allows you to communicate with other people that own Apple Watches. The features I find myself taking advantage of all the time are Apple Pay. That's a huge convenience thing because I rarely have to take my card out of my wallet anymore. The activity app for exercise and goal setting, and of course, all of the things that I mentioned previously that are common with most smartwatches, like reading notifications and taking calls. I do want to talk about the activity app in a bit more detail though, because oddly enough, I think it's the most attractive thing about this entire watch. The activity app has this strange pull to it that actually seems to work. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm a sloth. I spend about 10 to 12 hours in front of a computer every single day, and moving around is a bit of a pain for me. But for whatever reason, the act of closing your rings can actually be motivating. Since I got the watch, I found myself trying new activities like tennis or going on more outdoor walks. Heck, I even bought a treadmill to help close those rings. Not only that, but there's a competition aspect to it too. If you have other friends that have iPhones or Apple Watches, you can actually compete with them in calories burned or exercise time or other things like that. And if you win the challenge, you can collect these cool little medals. They're completely meaningless, but all of these little things put together can be an awesome tool for motivating yourself. I'm not saying the Apple Watch turned my life around or anything dramatic like that, but it's a positive motivator for things like exercise and healthy living. If you have other Apple products, the Apple Watch can also unlock them while you're wearing it. For example, if I wake my iMac up from sleep mode and I'm wearing my watch, it'll just automatically unlock for me. There is one really annoying thing I want to address about the features of the Apple Watch though. Unlike just about every Android-based smartwatch out there, the Apple Watch has a very small selection of watch faces to choose from. Yes, there is some selection, but ultimately I was very unhappy with what I could choose and had to settle on this one. There are what Apple calls complications for every watch face that you can customize, but that's about it. On the Android side of things, one of my favorite things to do was to peruse sites like, Face Repo and just download Pip-Boy 3000 watch faces with all sorts of cool gauges and tap interactions. You just can't do that on an Apple Watch. Unfortunately, the customization just isn't there for me. Oh, and for some stupid reason, there's no always-on display mode. The watch display always shuts off when you stop looking at it, so it kind of just looks like a dumb square brick on your wrist 95% of the time. I get that adding that function would reduce battery life, but at least make it an option, Apple, come on. Now, price and competition. The cheapest Apple Watch, the 40mm GPS model without LTE, starts at $400 and it can go all the way up to well over $500 with the 44mm LTE versions. That's a heck of a lot more expensive than just about every other smartwatch on the planet, including watches like the Samsung Galaxy Watch, Asus ZenWatch 2, and any of the Fitbits, Fossil Sport, and just a bunch of others. In order to get your money's worth out of the Apple Watch Series 4, you really need to take a step back and evaluate whether or not you believe that the new Series 4 features are worth the huge difference in price, because you can get an Apple Watch Series 3 for under $300 new, which is a much more competitive price point. Do you really need the slightly larger screen and smaller bezels, a slightly faster CPU, and the EKG app? Because you can get pretty much everything else on the Series 3. Just something to think about. All right, final recommendation time. Do I think the Series 4 is a great smartwatch? Absolutely. Do I think that every person that owns an iPhone should also own an Apple Watch? Absolutely not. Just like every other smartwatch out there, I believe that when you buy an Apple Watch, you are paying for a product that makes your life marginally easier every now and again. Being able to glance at your watch to read text messages and emails is convenient, but I could just sacrifice 3 seconds and pull out my phone to do the exact same thing. So the bottom line is this: if you want the Apple Watch Series 4 and you can afford it, buy it. People buy expensive fashion accessories all the time. You might as well buy something that does a lot more than a simple analog clock on your wrist. But don't fool yourself into thinking that you need an Apple Watch. Nobody needs a smartwatch, they're just neat to have. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like and subscribe to support my channel. And as always, have a great day.